Hello and welcome, everyone. It is Friday night, and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Agati in New York.
And I'm Lucy Liebfried in Chicago. You are listening to one of the highest-rated paranormal radio shows on Blog Talk. No bull, no lies, just a true platform for everyone to share their knowledge and experiences. When searching for the truth, good communication is key. Now, our phone lines are open for questions or for stories. The number to call is 661-244-9831. Make sure you press the number 1 to get into the queue. We'll try to get to you as soon as we can. Otherwise, our chat room is open so you can post any comments or questions there as well. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paranormal Review Radio. You'll find more articles, blogs, and full show uploads. And if you have specific questions, comments, or would like to be a guest on the show, email us at paranormal.review@aol.com. Now, sit back, get comfy, and prepare to open your minds. It's time for Paranormal Review Radio.
For the avid paranormal investigator, Gettysburg has become the mecca when it comes to spiritual phenomenon and sightings. There have been countless books and documentaries that pertain to the haunted roots that roam the fields of this historic location. Why do I mention this? Well, as you all know, we bring forward authors and researchers that not just bring a paranormal story to the forefront, but also add something unique to their findings. Award-winning journalist and newspaper editor Don Allison has stepped into the paranormal world without having a lifelong quest to find answers. Don was actually a highly regarded skeptic when it came to ghosts and spirits. Even his own grandmother couldn't convince him of the afterlife. But something changed. An experience like none other created a once diehard skeptic into someone who wants to find more answers. Don Allison's newest book, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, A Journalist's Journey into the Paranormal, is not a collection of stories, but experiences that Don himself encountered with an added science interpretation that could possibly explain the phenomena. If you have not experienced Gettysburg or have experienced and investigated there and were engulfed in emotions and awakenings, this show will be one to remember. Please help me in welcoming Don Allison to the show. Hello, Don. How are you tonight?
Hi, just fine. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Welcome, Don. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
You know what? You're a journalist by trade, and in your career, you've covered murders, trials, and politics. And you've written several books on different topics, including the Civil War. So how did you find yourself writing a book about the paranormal?
Well, I'll be quite honest. If you would have told me even a couple of years ago that I would write about the paranormal, I would have just shaken my head and said, "No, you're off your rocker. That's just not my cup of tea." But I've had some experiences over the last several years that have convinced me that, yes, indeed, there are things that deserve further study, and we really should try to understand.
Well, as a journalist, you do look to the facts surrounding something before you accept it as truth. So how difficult was it for you to accept the possibility of the paranormal being a real thing?
Well, I know in the introduction you made mention to my grandmother. She's been gone now for a number of years, but she was just a true definition of a Southern lady. My grandfather was a Baptist minister. She was a minister's wife, but she had told me stories when I was a child of living in a haunted house in Louisiana. And I used to just shake my head. She told about waking up to find a man in older clothes standing at the end of the bed just watching them. She said when he realized she could see him, he vanished. She said their covers would be pulled off in the night. At one point, she said somebody sat on the bed. You could see the indentation of the mattress, but nobody was there. And I have to confess, my thought was that either Grandma had an active imagination or maybe she should have laid off the spicy Cajun food before going to bed. But later on, I started to think, well, yeah, after some things have happened to me, I think she really did have those experiences.
Well, when she was telling you all these stories, and we've all heard them. Our family members, our parents, they tell us these stories. But was there anything in those stories that kind of gave you maybe a little thought? Well, maybe she is seeing what she's seeing.
Well, it was so out of character, not at all like anything she would normally tell me. She was a pretty down-to-earth, straightforward person. So I knew she believed them. There was no doubt there, but it was hard for me to actually believe that, yes, this really happened.
Well, Don, we'll talk about your experiences at Gettysburg, but you seem to have, just from the interviews that I've watched and listened in doing research for tonight, you seem to have a real healthy attitude and opinion about the paranormal. It's almost like none other than I've seen in folks who were once skeptics and now maybe not so much believers, but looking for the truth or for finding the answers. Where did you gain that knowledge? Where did you obtain that insight, and how did it sort of help formulate your theories or your sort of belief in the paranormal now?
Well, I always try to be open-minded, and I was never antagonistic toward the paranormal. It didn't seem real to me. But my initial eye-openers came when my wife and I purchased the house where we now reside, and we're still restoring. We had just purchased the place. We're outside working, and a gentleman pulled in. And this fellow had lived in the house for, I think, 24 years before he'd finally moved out. It was in very rough shape. But he told us, he said, "Do you know this house is haunted?" And we look at each other, really, and I had to bite my tongue, because what came to mind is, gee, that explains the half-empty booze bottles we're finding hidden around the house. But I was nice. I didn't say that. And he proceeded to tell some stories. One that made an impression on me was that when he said he would be downstairs and he would hear light footsteps. There are 3 bedrooms upstairs plus a hallway. He said the steps would start in the south bedroom, go across through into the middle bedroom, across the hallway, and then into the north bedroom, and the door would slam. And he seemed to believe what he's saying, but then he also shared some information about having voyeur aliens watching him through the bathroom window. So that kind of squelched my belief. But we hadn't had the house too terribly long, and I'm working downstairs. It's like in the evening, and I heard exactly what John described, what sounded like light footsteps. In my mind, I could see a young woman or a girl barefooted. These steps did exactly what John had described, and the door shut. So immediately, I grab a flashlight, head upstairs, and there's nothing. The dust is not disturbed. The house was pretty dirty at this point yet. But what was odd is the door shut, but this door was stuck shut. The house had settled, and you could not open this door. We've since gotten it open, but at that time you could not open it. And I thought, wow. So I started kind of looking into things. The very first thing that happened at the house is I was repairing a spot on the front porch to give access, and this took about probably 3 or 4 hours one evening after work. When I got ready to leave, I went to pull the door. It's a beautiful door on very solid antique hinges, swings very easily. I went to shut it, and the door actually was pulled backwards out of my hand. I could find nothing that the door would have caught on, nothing in the hinges. So I kind of shook my head, locked it. I came back the next day, and there was a pine cone perched upright in the very middle of this repaired porch, right in front of the door. And I'm thinking, there's a pine tree there, but it couldn't have fallen. It couldn't have perched precariously like that. Well, I did a little research into pine cones and, the spiritual significance, the third eye, even a bit of a Victorian reference to welcome, kind of like the pineapple. But that got my mind going too. But several related type things happen, and I just kept kind of pushing it away, like, no, this really can't be happening. There's some sort of explanation. I talked to my wife about it. She was out here working with me. She experienced a number of these things, footsteps primarily, very realistic sounding footsteps. So we started researching, watching some of the TV shows, and talking with folks. I talked to some friends and coworkers, and they seemed very understanding, and they seemed to believe me. They at least didn't say to my face that, "Hey, you've lost it here, Don." But
right.
But that went a long ways toward opening my mind.
Well, we hear a lot of stories, and many of the folks that are within the circle that Lucy and I talk to and have worked with about once a homeowner starts to renovate their home, it usually conjures up or stirs up, the spiritual activity that may have been settling there for a long time. Either that, maybe the spirit is unhappy with the renovation, or that just the activity in there has sort of awakened the spirits to sort of work with or communicate with the living that's there. Have you done any research in regards to your home or the land to find out any specifics that could lead to the possibilities of who or why these spirits may be active in your home?
Yeah, we have actually, before we even purchased the house, we looked into the history of it. The gentleman who built the house, or had it built, was a War of 1812 veteran. He founded a little town called Pulaski, Ohio. This house is just outside of that town. A number of families had the house. It apparently was an Underground Railroad stop. One of the movers and shakers of the Underground Railroad was son-in-law, and then his wife, the daughter of the original house builders. A number of people have died here. John, the gentleman who lived in the house for many years before we bought it, called the ghost Uncle Bill. And there was a gentleman by the name of William who did die in the house in the 1940s. But yeah, a lot of what seems to be happening is residual with the footsteps and so forth. There's a very good feeling. I've never been frightened by anything. Unfortunately, neither is Diane. But what really opened my eyes is when intelligent hauntings, when there was obviously intelligence and even a sense of humor behind things. One evening I was working. A lot of what happens here has to do with radios, especially turning off and on, changing stations. One evening I was working, again, before we had power to the house. I had a generator running, and I had a radio plugged in into the power cord from the generator. And each time it was a classic rock station. Each time a rather loud, kind of raucous sound came on, the radio turned off. Well, after the third time that it turned off, I just got frustrated, and this was out of character for me at the time. I just spoke out loud and said, "Look, I like this music. I enjoy it. Leave it alone. Don't mess with the radio." A little bit later, the song Elton John, "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting," came on. The generator outside turned off.
Wow.
And it left me in the dark, no music or light. The generator was fine. I went out, fired it right back up, and I'm just laughing at this point, like, okay, you showed me.
Sounds more like intelligent hauntings now.
A lot of them are. I mean, I've gotten responses to the old shave and a haircut routine.
Right.
One time a friend was helping me repair, we drywalled upstairs middle bedroom ceiling was severely water damaged. The house, this part of the house was built in 1835. The place is not square. The front of the room differed by 6 inches from the width in the back of the room. So we had most of the drywall done, and I turned to my friend, and I had a carpenter T-square and a tape measure, one in each hand. As I set them down on the tray on one of the step ladders, I said, you know, they obviously did not have these when they built the house. We laughed and left. This was a Saturday. We came back the next day on a Sunday. The T-square and the tape measure were laying smack in the middle of the floor in the adjoining bedroom in the newer 1869 edition. That one really blew my mind, and fortunately I had a friend with me to witness it as well.
Good.
Oh, well, you know, Don, we've talked to many people in and out of the field, and we always get interesting answers to what they believe spirits and ghosts are, besides energy that might be residual or intelligent, as you mentioned. Do you believe that we actually take on a form and continue living after death, or is there something that we just aren't aware of yet to explain this?
Well, I don't have a clear answer, but I believe the evidence seems to me that an essence of our personality and energy, the basis maybe of a belief in our soul, is one way I look at it. That yes, I do believe that things continue on. I've had some rather odd experiences, once with a dream in which my grandfather gave me a warning of something that was happening as the dream was occurring. There are just too many things to me that say, yes, I think we do continue on.
Okay. Well, let's get to Gettysburg, okay?
Okay.
Personally, I have been fascinated with this location for a very long time. And I have been asking Anthony over and over, when are we going to go investigate? So how did you...
Go ahead.
How did you come to visit Gettysburg and take us on this journey through the experiences that you had?
I have been fascinated with the Civil War since childhood. Most of my books that I've written deal with the Civil War. And Gettysburg had always captivated me. For some reason, the struggle for Little Round Top with the 20th Maine and the 15th and 47th Alabama, since I was a young man, have just captivated me. I don't know why, or didn't know why. I think I do now. But my first trip to Gettysburg, my wife and I honeymooned there many years ago. Nothing paranormal. We returned there on our 25th anniversary, and we had a number of odd occurrences. We had just purchased our house, and we're just getting into, I guess, our paranormal research, reading, and so forth. And I thought, well, we're going to Gettysburg. I'd like to meet Mark Nesbitt. Of course, the Ghosts of Gettysburg series author, noted researcher. So I'd called ahead. I said, well, I'd like to interview you for the newspaper I work for, the Bryan Times. And he kindly agreed. And part of that, we met at his building in Gettysburg, which is haunted, by the way. And we talked a lot about what happens at our house. He assured us, no, these are very run-of-the-mill, very common things. You're not crazy. Yes, these are real. I went to take Mark's picture before we left, and my camera would not work. I had just checked it out before. If I would try about a dozen times hitting the shutter, it would finally take a picture. Otherwise, it would shut off. Mark's just laughing and says, happens all the time. And I'm thinking, okay, nothing, changing batteries, nothing worked. Camera had never malfunctioned before. Well, Diane and I go out and about. 2 days, the camera worked fine after we left. 2 days later, we were coming into the park, and it was I could almost feel something in the atmosphere. It had been raining. We're approaching the park. The rain stops. And I'm thinking, great, now we can go to Little Round Top. We turn onto Confederate Avenue. Just as I'm turning, the song Sweet Home Alabama comes on. Well, I have Alabama ancestors, a number of them who fought in Alabama units in the Civil War. I didn't know of any Gettysburg connection, though. So we come to the Alabama Monument, and I thought, cool, it's a nice fall day, fall colors. I'll get another picture of the Alabama Monument with this beautiful foliage. Again, my camera refused to work. I tried like a dozen times. It would turn off. Finally, I got a couple of pictures, and I'm thinking, this has got to be the camera. This is just too weird. Song Sweet Home Alabama, of course, is still playing on the van radio while I'm doing this, was just really, it has my mind kind of going. So we drive the short distance from there up to Little Round Top, and again with the colors, I thought I'll run up, excuse me, and get a photo of the 20th Main Monument with the fall colors. Once again, the camera refused to work. But what was odd, I could turn away from the monument, looking down the hill where the Alabama troops charged, and take any photo I wanted. As soon as I pointed at that Union Monument, the camera turned off. This continued with any Union monument anywhere on Little Round Top until we got into the wheat field. I could take Confederate monuments. I could take general photos of the landscape. I could not take a Union monument photo. Just blew my mind. Camera then worked. Camera never did that again. I gave it to my son later, and he used it for a while. I never knew of him to have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my introduction to the paranormal at Gettysburg.
So who is the ghost that you met at Gettysburg?
Well, my last trip was about a year ago, just over a year ago we got back, but I took my grandson to Gettysburg. We weren't thinking paranormal, looking paranormal, but as a journalist registered with their tourism bureau, I had some options to do some different things, and one of the options was a ghost investigation. And, I asked my grandson, Connor, he was 14 at the time, does that sound like fun? He said, sure, let's go for it. So we did. I thought this was just a touristy thing. I've done some of the ghost tours where they tell you the stories, and they may play some recorded EVPs that they'd gotten earlier, but I'm not expecting thing one. And when they told me we were going to Sachs Bridge, I'm thinking, I saw that on my honeymoon. It was a beat-up old wooden bridge, covered bridge. You can see those all over. But they convinced me, no, this is good. You'll like it. So the young lady, Destiny Sanchez, was the investigator. She brought out equipment. We got to pick what we wanted to use. Well, I thought the spirit box was pretty cool, to get some real-time EVPs. We also used K2 meters and a laser grid. If I had it to do over again, I would have taken an audio recorder and recorded the entire thing, but I'm just thinking this is a lark. There are a bunch of other people there. I thought it was more like a circus, but Destiny was filling me in on the background, and I did not realize that Sachs Bridge was actually, that whole area was one vast field hospital. And the very worst of the wounded were left behind there when the Confederates retreated. I'm sure that they left behind their worst wounded of their Union prisoners as well. And so we're going around. We're not getting much of anything on the spirit box. We got a few blips on our K2. One Destiny did ask one question that got a clear answer. We were in one of the field hospitals near the bridge. Destiny asked if the wind's kicking up here. Destiny asked if anything there could tell what color coat one of us is wearing. We got the clear answer, blue. Well, that's kind of neat, but nothing else, just kind of static, nothing really clear. Destiny spotted a shadow figure, and I could tell she was very startled. We went back across the bridge. The crowd was thinning out. We went back into the woods on the other side. My grandson saw a shadow figure. He obviously was startled. And, well, okay, there's a little bit here, but our 2-hour investigation is all but over. But we finally had the bridge to ourselves. So we're sitting there, and we started asking questions and getting some answers. And Destiny, the investigator, says, how many of you are with us? And we got a very clear, from the spirit box, 7, 8, 9. I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And it was getting very cold. It was still March at this point. She went back to warm up the car, and we got just some staticky answers. But I'm trying to think, okay, if this is really something from the Civil War, how can I connect? So I said, do you like jokes? And I got a very clear, yes, sir. And I thought, okay. Do you like music? And it was like you could even catch the inflection of an insult, like, of course. And this is getting my attention big time. And my grandson, quick thinking, he says, can you play for us? And we got a very clear, absolutely, and we started getting guitar music. And then a higher pitched, it sounded like a mandolin. Destiny thought maybe a piano, but just, kind of coming in and out. It was the investigator. She came back as this music is going, and her jaw dropped. She's just like staring at the spirit box. And this went on. It started to fade, so I said, wow, you're good. He says, thank you. He says, can you play some more? Yes, sir. We got more music. This time a harmonica kicked in. And this went on for probably 10 minutes. This music kept fading in and out. Well, finally, after the music quits, Destiny started asking more questions. Says, can you give us your name? And it was a very clear 3-syllable, but all we could understand for sure was the middle on, like on. And she asked several times, can you enunciate more clearly? And you could even just sense the strain in the voice, but we couldn't make out anything beyond the middle syllable. She asked what year this was, 1863. At this point, I didn't know whether to be excited. The hair's like standing up on the back of my neck. It's like, this can't be real. That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to have to figure out how they're faking this. This can't be real. But I started asking, well, Destiny said, how old are you? And we didn't get an answer right away. I should have waited, but I said, what unit are you with? We got a clear 20. And then twice more, 20. And I think it was the age, not the unit. And then we got a clear captain. And at this point, I'm just pinching myself. Being a Civil War historian and actually speaking with a captain from the Civil War. So I asked, what state are you from? I couldn't understand. None of us could understand. Very staticky. So I started rattling off states. No answer. I said Ohio, and we got a very clear yes, sir. And I said, Connor and I are from Ohio, and both Connor and I's K2 meters, which had barely blipped the whole night, went up to the top level, stayed for probably 5 seconds, and came back down. The K2 held by the investigator did not move even a blip. So this whole scenario was just, to me, that's all I could think is, if this is real, it's incredible, but I couldn't bring myself to truly believe it. We were there a little while. We could sense the energy fading a little bit. Destiny said, "How many of you are with us?" And this time it was 6, 7. And she said, "Were you hurt?" And this is the part that, even talking about it, I kind of shiver. We got the most unearthly, blood-curdling male scream of total anguish that you could imagine. It lasted several seconds, and then a woman crying. That pretty much took the air out of our investigation. We just kind of sat there stunned.
Yeah.
And at this point, another group came onto the bridge, so we decided to leave.
I mean, that's an amazing story. And what's coming through in my head right now, as you were mentioning earlier, that I think you had mentioned that you have family members in the Civil War, and you yourself have written books, and I think have done reenactments of the Civil War. Do you think that there was a specific reason as to why you experienced what you experienced at Gettysburg at that time with your grandson?
With this particular case at Sachs Bridge, I really don't know. One thing I do know is when I got back, I looked into the historical record. I'm thinking, okay, were there any Ohio captains killed or mortally wounded at Gettysburg, and would any of them had occasion to be at Sachs Bridge, which was under Confederate control until after the Confederates retreated?
Right.
It turns out there were a number of Ohio captains killed or mortally wounded, but one stuck out in my mind. And I'll preface this with saying I don't know if it was this particular soldier, but his name was Mahlon Briggs, 3 syllables, on in the middle. He was seriously wounded the first day, fell into Confederate hands, and he died on July 3rd in Confederate hands. Could well have died at Sachs Bridge. Like I say, I can't prove he was there. I can't prove this was the soldier, but the record matches. But
That's amazing.
I did have an experience our final night in Gettysburg. That my incidents earlier with the Alabama monument, the main monument, and the camera had stuck in my mind. Well, I had done some research, and I found out that I indeed had a great-great-grandfather in the 15th Alabama who fought at Gettysburg. 3 great-great-great-uncles in the 47th Alabama who fought at Little Round Top also. And when my grandson and I went after dark to the Alabama monument, I put a CD in my van of Sweet Home Alabama. I rattled off names of all the Alabama ancestors that I was aware of who served the Confederacy. While I did so, my grandson took photos as quickly as he could. Now, we both took photos before and after this, and they all came out fine, but 3 of the 15 photos he took while I read off the names had orbs. No 2 photos in a row, and the orbs were always somewhere else. No orbs in any other photo. I know orbs are kind of nebulous. I don't know. I just know that the odds of it happening the way it did are very slim for it to have been something like dust. We then drove to Little Round Top. We were parked right where the Alabama troops charged through going up the hill. My grandson, we stopped the van, turned everything off, rolled the windows down. My grandson took 5 photos. The first photo, looking up Little Round Top, had 8 orbs in it. One of the orbs even had a tail like a comet heading at us. The next 4 showed a very yellowish, orangish mist forming. In each of the photos, the mist was larger, and it was much larger on the last shot. None of this was visible to the naked eye, but when Connor, replayed what he had taken and showed me that, he was like, "Whoa!" The only time I saw him really get uncomfortable with what's going on, he said, "Grandpa, let's get out of here." So we left. I have since found out, and this really makes me wonder, were indeed my ancestors trying to point something out to me, but Frank D. Champion, my great-great-grandfather in the 15th Alabama, was captured at Little Round Top. Later escaped from Point Lookout, Maryland prison camp, returned to his regiment, and was there at Appomattox. To me, getting those pictures, experiences with the cameras earlier, is just very strange to me. What's the odds of that coincidence?
Right.
With the family connection. Plus, I'd been fascinated with Little Round Top, and I had no reason to know why. Now I know.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what, Don? Many people say when they're exposed to the paranormal, physical changes start to happen biologically with the person. Now, you mentioned dreams, okay? And a lot of times dreams, visions, people become sensitive to energy. The dreams that you had, you mentioned your grandfather. Can you tell us about them? What happened?
I don't remember the last time I had dreamed about my grandfather. He died in 1972. I was a freshman in high school. But just before I awoke one morning, shortly after moving into our house here, I had the most vivid dream that I ran into my grandfather outside of what was then in Bryan, Ohio, my uncle's restaurant. My grandfather had been a restaurateur most of his life, and he helped out at my uncle's restaurant in his retirement. But my grandfather was dressed all in white in this dream, which he never dressed like. But he was talking to me, but I heard no sound. But he guided me into the restaurant. We sat down in one of the booths. There were two women there dressed in very old-fashioned, probably 50s, 60s clothing. I did not recognize either one of them. They were talking. I could hear no words. My grandpa was talking. I could hear no words. But then he pointed down to his crotch very emphatically. And I'm thinking, well, I think Grandpa's telling me a dirty joke, and I was young enough when he died that he usually kept his jokes pretty clean. He had a tremendous sense of humor, and I bet he could tell the dirty joke with the best of them. But then I awoke, and I'm just thinking, whoa, this dream was just incredible. I wonder what this means. It just was so real, and I was just physically affected by it. Well, I got into work at the newspaper. Shortly after that, I got a call from my mother. She was in the emergency room with my dad. At the time I had the dream is when they would have been arriving at the emergency room. And it turns out my dad had a very serious infection, and it apparently had started as a bladder infection and had turned to sepsis, a life-threatening infection. My mom's trying to downplay it. Immediately I knew what that dream was all about, and I said, no, Mom, I'll be there. They had to transport him to another hospital. He's very lucky he survived. But I think I was able to be a huge help to my mother, being with her before my sisters could arrive and helping her deal with the situation and Dad's care. And just another one of those mind-boggling experiences.
Well, you know what, Dan? I do have a question about one of your other books.
Sure.
The name Hell on Bell Island, Diary of a Civil War Prisoner of War. Now, have the experiences at Gettysburg, have they given you a different view of the subject of the book? And can you tell us the story about how you found a photo of Sergeant Jacob Coburn?
Just that entire book project. I was working on something else. My co-author on another project had actually made a copy from a microfilm newspaper from like the 1930s in Bryan of a letter from a soldier on a regiment we were working on. Just by chance, on this microfilm copy was a little notice about a diary being reprinted in the Edgerton, Ohio newspaper at the same time by a fellow who was a POW. Well, I was very curious. I knew the publisher of the Edgerton paper at that time. He dug out the old bound copies, loaned them to me, and I made copies of this diary. turns out the original diary burned in a house fire in the 1970s. This was the only way it was preserved. And I thought, oh, I have to do something with that. Well, fast forward a few years, my wife and I are in the Irish Hills of Michigan. We had been celebrating our anniversary. We're on our way home, and we love antiques. We saw this little shop called Mugsy's on US 12. We looked at each other. Do you want to stop? No, we're tired. I got up to the shop, and I just felt compelled, just driven almost, to pull in. And my wife's looking at me. Diane says, I thought you weren't stopping. I said, well, we'll just run in and look through. So we did. I actually was heading out the front door, but Diane spotted a Civil War CDV, a little cardboard-mounted photo that looked exactly like a woman we know through our living history. So Diane decides to buy this photo. I come back in, and I notice a picture of a Civil War soldier I had missed, and asked to see it. The lady takes it out from behind the counter, hands it to me. I flip it over, and on the back is the name J. Osborne Coburn. Died in Libby Prison. Well, he actually died in Belle Isle. Both were in Richmond. But I thought, this can't be. I turned the photo over. He was holding his hat. There were cross cavalry sabers. He was a cavalryman. The number 6, he was in the 6th Michigan Cavalry, and the letter I, he was in Company I. So it undoubtedly was him. I was speechless. My wife said one of the few times ever she has seen me speechless. That convinced me. I dropped everything else I was doing and focused on doing the book. It turned out to be the Hell on Belle Isle book. Just some things are meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that in all the stories that you've been telling us already so far. It just seems that there's a specific reason why you are experiencing what you're experiencing. Whether it is your family, your ancestral family, sort of guiding you along. It seems that there is a reason for everything that is going on in your life.
And I will say, especially in my writing career, some of my best work does seem to come out of things that just pop out of the blue for whatever reason. The Hell on Belle Isle project's a great example. My experiences at Gettysburg for the I Met a Ghost book is a perfect example. That I just kind of let the universe control me, like this is meant to be. And things just, when I do these projects, things fall into place. People pop out of nowhere with information. It's almost uncanny that it happens each time that I'm in a project like that.
Well, besides, I guess the introduction now into the paranormal and the belief in spirits and ghosts, how far does your believability or your belief in the paranormal go? I mean, do you believe? Have you even thought about aliens or Bigfoot or creatures that are sort of supernatural phenomenon? Have you delved into that area? Have you thought about sort of the other aspects of the paranormal?
I have not delved into it, but I know that I'm much less skeptical of those areas than I formerly was.
Well, typically the media presents any stories regarding the paranormal typically only around Halloween time when the demand is higher and people are a little bit more receptive. It's not something that is broadcasted on the news basically in the summertime. How has your fellow colleagues and industry friends received your newfound belief?
I was very, very hesitant to address the topic. That's one of the reasons. I thought people would just be very skeptical, but I think my background, how I approach the topic, the fact that I like to think I have a very good reputation in the field, people take me seriously, including coworkers, including others in the field. I've been to Gettysburg when the book first came out last fall. Was interviewed at several newspapers in Pennsylvania. I've been in papers in my area here, and I have not met anyone who has been at all, I guess, I don't want to say not skeptical, but I have not had anyone doubt my word, and I've been taken very seriously. And I am very gratified for that.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, because your stories are so interesting, and I mean, the way you tell them, I mean, there's no doubt that you have experienced these things. I mean, this isn't something, sometimes, being a journalist, I mean, you know how you can sense that, when someone's not exactly, maybe they're gilding the lily a little bit,
Yeah, you usually pick up pretty quickly when something's not quite right.
Right. Well, you know what? We talked about how when people go to locations like Gettysburg, even when they're not thinking of the paranormal, just, for history's sake, the emotions, they run high because of the circumstances and just the very idea of so many young men dying in this one area. And it almost creates energy in the space that can be perceived as paranormal. Now, in your opinion, coming from a skeptic mind, why is a place like Gettysburg so important to our history, our future, our purpose for living?
The amount of human emotion and suffering and for lack of a better term, the dedication, the willingness. People went in with their eyes wide open, knowing they very well may be killed or maimed for life, but they were willing to do that for their beliefs. And it ties in, the more I read, the more I see, the more I experience, I'm very firmly believe that energy is at the key to all this. Part of Gettysburg, one of the theories I've read is that the quartz in that area holds the energy more so than in most other areas, like a quartz watch. It just, the importance, what it means to our country. It might not be a United States of America, at least not as we know it today, had the South won at Gettysburg. Yeah, it was definitely one of the most important 3-day periods our nation has ever seen.
Well, Don, coming from being a skeptic to wanting to learn more and to try and find out more answers about the paranormal, what would you say to skeptics out there now that don't believe in the paranormal, or for that matter, that spirits actually still roam Gettysburg?
One of the things I like to tell people is if you haven't experienced it, then you're very likely not to believe it. I was very much the same way. What I also like to tell people is it's not something to be afraid of or to shun or to think it's the work of the devil. Think of what primitive cultures must have thought when they saw a rainbow or an eclipse of the sun, what that must have, done to them. I think there's science behind all this, and I think we should be open-minded.
Excellent. Well, you know what, Don? I really enjoyed this book. I met a ghost at Gettysburg. It's not a storybook, but it's an adventure through the eyes of someone who has been transformed. And it's such an enlightening collection of emotions and words. So what I want to ask you, what is it that you hope your readers take from this book?
I strongly thought about that before I ever wrote the book. And my initial thought was that I would hope it would spark some of our best, intelligent, scientific minds to turn their full attention to this field so we can learn more about it. I think it's a vast unknown, and I think it is science, and I wish we could learn more about it. I know there are people working on it, and I appreciate their efforts and wish them the best. The second part, it was secondary at the time, but now it's probably equal in importance to me, is folks like my wife was, when we first started working on this house and had these odd experiences. You're not nuts. I hope that people will share this book or can read this book. Hey, yeah, I'm not alone. This happens to other people. And I hope that can give them some peace, maybe give them some guidance to learn more.
Well, you know what? One thing I have to say to you, I am so impressed. Coming from a skeptic, you have really, and I don't want to say, I don't know, maybe embrace is too strong of a word, but you really have learned. You really have immersed yourself in it. So I was really impressed with that.
That's kind of how I am with any project. My Hell on Belle Isle book that you referenced earlier, I made trips to anywhere where Osborne Coburn lived. I made several trips to Richmond, Virginia. I traipsed Belle Isle. I traipsed where he was captured. I retraced his route from where he was captured to Richmond. I think that's the only way to really tell a story, is to immerse yourself in it. And
it's a wonderful experience. I totally enjoyed the book. But I do want to ask you, will you write another paranormal book?
I think so. I haven't yet decided exactly what it will be. I know some things that are going to be in it. I had another experience at Gettysburg after the book came out, when I was there to promote the book, with a regiment that turns out there were men from my county there. I spent about 10 minutes totally transfixed. I was so overcome with emotion I could barely stand. A place where basically these poor men of German descent, most of them didn't even speak English, just went through pure hell on day 1 and day 2 at Gettysburg. And at one of their positions, I just had an indescribable experience. At the time, I didn't know that there were local men in the regiment. That's another of those uncanny things.
Wow. Well, you know what, Don? Thank you so much. Thank you again. The name of the book is I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, and it can be purchased through Amazon.com or go to imetaghost.com for more information. Don, have a wonderful evening, and we would love to have you back on the show again.
Well, great. Keep in contact. I'll definitely let you know as things progress toward another book. I'm hoping to have it out in time for the fall season. I'm not positive yet. I've still got a lot going through my mind on it. But yes, thank you for having me on tonight. I've enjoyed it as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Don. Have a great weekend.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I have to apologize to you and to everybody. I am not feeling well tonight, as you can probably hear from my voice. So I actually had to step away for a few minutes just before. But Lucy, what? I know the reason why you like to have Don on the show tonight. Besides trying to give me more, give you yourself more ammo to convince me to go to Gettysburg, which I promise I will get to Gettysburg. But what was it about this book, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, that intrigued you to invite Don on the show?
Well, aside from the whole Gettysburg experience, it was the fact that it was written by a former skeptic. And that's one of the things that I do enjoy. I like hearing people who at one point have this disbelief about the paranormal, and then through their experiences, all of a sudden end up on the side where they're saying, yeah, there could be something to it. Like you and I and the listeners, I mean, we pretty much have that belief. For some reason or another, it's come easy to us. But there's that one segment, that they don't believe. They don't believe that it's going to happen, that there's got to be a logical explanation. But reading the book, Don had so many little experiences that I just kept shaking my head, especially when he was talking about his house and the renovations. And what does every investigator know? Once you start making renovations, something usually happens. If the location's haunted, if there's a spirit that's there, most of the time they're going to let you know that they're there, whether it's they don't like what you're doing, or maybe they do like what you're doing, or maybe they just want to say, hi, let me help you. I mean, I really did enjoy this because it's not just, here's my experiences. I went here, here, and this happened. This is a guy who pretty much he's a journalist, so he's going to look for the facts. He probably has a more thorough way of looking at things, and all of these experiences add up for him. And I really, really enjoyed that. That's what caught my eye about it.
Well, when doing research for tonight and going over the book and listening and reading to some of the interviews that Don had given to other media outlets, it just seemed, just from his history, talking about family, ancestral family, great-great-grandfathers and so on and so forth, that have been in the Civil War, known to be a soldier in the Civil War, and the feeling of attraction to the Civil War and the battles at a young age. I'm sure he may have been told this by his parents when he was young, but this continued on to his adult life. And how many people can say that they, something that they've sort of had a fascination with at a young age that has extended into their adulthood for this amount of time. But what intrigued me about his story, is that it just seemed, just from the stories that he's telling and the experiences that he's had at Gettysburg and at his home as well, just seems to me it seems that his family, who have gone into the afterlife, are trying to convince him or trying to show him that the paranormal does exist, that something that he had been probably denying for a while. I don't know the level of denial, or just maybe it was just the lack of interest in the paranormal itself that led him to not, sort of delve into it as much. But it just seemed as though that, his family have sort of guided him in a way that would allow him to ease into the paranormal. So it makes sense that a Civil War ancestor, soldier that was in his family, have given him the insight into the paranormal because of his interest in the Civil War. It's sort of leading him easy into the paranormal so that it would click for him. I think if he would have walked into, probably an insane asylum or something that had nothing to do with the Civil War or his ancestors, and things may have happened, he may not have been easily swayed or convinced that the paranormal exists. I think because of that background, he started to think a little bit more about what this meaning is. Why is it that there are responses on a spirit box? Why is it that these dreams are happening to him? Why is it that these spirits are interacting with him at his home that he's renovating with his wife? It just seemed to me that there is a special reason for it, and that to me is something a little bit more special than a regular paranormal story, a regular experience story. There's a purpose and a reason and a meaning for it, and that's what attracted me to Don's story, to Don's life.
Well, what's really interesting when you're reading the book, you know how some people, when you hear their stories, their first experiences, oh, I was so scared, they talk about the fear that they have. There is no sense of fear at all during this journey. I didn't get that sense whatsoever. Everything was, okay, so let's figure out what this is. I mean, he was very calm about the whole thing, which I think you're right. There has to be some kind of pull, or he has been guided to Gettysburg and to his interest. Because, like I says, when you're reading the book, there's no sense of, there's no big, oh, I was frightened out of my wits. It's not like that. It's a very calm, it's a very, it's almost like you can see the little steps, where the belief starts kicking in. And as you read further, you can just see it. It's getting stronger and stronger. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it just seems like, his ancestors were leading him, were guiding him by the hand into this. And being a journalist, being a writer himself, able to communicate that to the public, able to share that with others who either may have been a skeptic or are just a believer and want to find out a little bit more information on that. But I was also interested in the way that, coming from being a skeptic himself to, I'm not sure if he's a full believer yet, but he's a proponent, I believe, for the idea that paranormal does exist. But coming from being a skeptic to being a part of the paranormal and trying to understand the paranormal itself and finding answers, how, and I mentioned this before, how healthy his attitude and his opinion is on it, and how he's structured his theories on why it might possibly exists based upon his, sort of journalistic or even scientific type of background that he has, that, this could be the energy, the residual energy that your body holds. Once you were born, we all emit energy. We all emit, electrical current. We all have this energy within us. It's a known fact. It's science. And so therefore, if energy, does not dissipate, it just transforms. That this energy is what the spirit realm is all about. And at this point in time, I'm a big proponent of that. I'm a big believer in that idea, as well as Don is. And it sort of just reaffirms sort of the same beliefs that I have in what I believe at this moment in time, what the afterlife could be about. And I say that with slight hesitation and with a small amount of doubt, because I don't know 100%. I don't think anybody on this planet knows 100% what the afterlife is all about. I don't think we are physically capable of understanding what the paranormal or the afterlife is all about, because it's not meant for the living. That's why that's why we're not residing in the afterlife. It's not something that we're easily able to accept, and it's until we pass over that energy is able to take on that dimension, that world, that afterlife. And so, I don't think we'll fully understand what it is all about. But just coming from being a skeptic, I think he's it's really healthy of him, and it's not that he has either some wild explanation or that he is not really thinking about what the paranormal is all about. He took in the ideas of, the energies and the light and the transformations, and, he understands residual and intelligent, which is something I think easily a lot of people can accept and understand right away. But it just seems very structured and organized with his understanding and his beliefs, and I appreciated that. I guess I was able to accept his experiences a lot more because of that.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I figured you would like that. I mean, I just enjoyed hearing about the stories. I enjoyed hearing about his grandmother, okay? And like he says, I mean, she was a minister's wife, a preacher's wife. So, she told him these stories, and he didn't really believe him, but that was laying the groundwork for everything that was coming. the interest in Gettysburg. That's got to be a pull from one of his ancestors. I mean, even if you don't have a connection to Gettysburg, it is so full of energy. It is so full of what people can doubt, but it's so full of spirits. It's so full of everything. And this is the one spot that I truly feel that the ground does remember. That ground was soaked with the blood of all of these. I believe what the number was, something like 60,000 died in those 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's all still being held by that ground. And these poor guys they weren't buried. They were buried in mass graves. They were falling so quickly that they would make a mass grave and move on. So you're talking about all of these lives that ended so quickly, and they really they weren't put to rest in, I don't want to say in a proper manner, but they weren't put to rest in a proper manner. So, yeah, it makes sense that all of these energies are still there, either to let us know what happened, or there has to be a lot of unfinished business. There's families, there's children, there's dreams, hopes that they had, and all of these were cut short by these 3 days. I mean, it is mind-boggling.
You know, I heard something recently, and I'm not sure I think it may have been Don as well, listening to a previous interview that he had done, that kind of made sense to me a little bit. And forgive me if it is Don or is not Don, I'm not sure. But when we are at any given location, either your home or in the park or in a store, wherever, and something traumatic happens to you. Maybe, you were in a store and you were held up at gunpoint. Maybe you fell down or had an accident somewhere and hurt yourself really, really badly. The energy that is created at that moment, that something significant, something impactful, something traumatic, and I lean more towards the negative because that's what usually generates the most energy, or the most energy that is heavier than a sort of positive energy, if that makes sense. That energy tends to stain, for lack of a better word, stain that area. And that's from the living. That's from you still being alive. And so we had talked about this before. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, where I mentioned that, people are attracted to Gettysburg for a number of reasons. You have the paranormal groups out there who are attracted to it to investigate, to find communication with spirits. But you also have people who are, diehard, Civil War enthusiasts, or just battle and war enthusiasts as a generic label. And there are many people that year-round, season after season, go to Gettysburg to visit, to contemplate, to absorb the idea that they're actually standing on the land that was once a huge battle. And all of those energies, all of those different energies, because they're possibly impactful to you, either you were an investigator there and something happened, or you were just a tourist and you felt an emotion that was there that impacted you. Those energies are stained from you. And, the idea is, could the energies that we, the living, are leaving behind year after year and season after season at such locations like Gettysburg, is that doing anything to the residual or intelligent spiritual energy that is lying there? Or could it also be the idea that that the energy that we are leaving behind is being transformed into something that we are interpreting as the afterlife. It's a thought that I've had, and it's something that has been in my crazy, wide, big head of mine that I try and think about, because it's a debate that I know a lot of people have talked about, but I don't think have gone really into depth with, to figure out the energies of the living and the energies of the dead and the deceased, and how those commingle. How does it commingle, or how does it affect each other in certain locations, or in any location? So I throw that out there for people to think about and comment about. But I'm just curious, Lucy, if you had thought of that as well, or if even had a comment or an opinion about the idea of the living energies commingling or coexisting with spiritual energy, and how that affects each other, how that creates either the stories or the experiences that many of us have.
Well, I've never thought about it, particularly, but listening to you talk about it, yeah, I mean, we're all energy, okay? So the energy that we are releasing as a living being on this plane, I believe, yes, it can commingle with the energy that is there in a location. And I don't think it's just, I think traumatic, the energy that results of a traumatic event, yes, that would be the strongest. But then again, too, I believe, energy of joy, energy of happiness, I think that can affect them too. I think it can commingle because energy, there's no boundaries, there's no container that it's in. Your body can be the container, but your energy, your spirit is free. I mean, once we leave this body, our energy still continues. So yes, I think I've just got this vision of a nice big mist just going back and forth. And I think it can commingle. I think they can be separate, but I think they can also commingle. So, and in a particular location, yes, I think that can happen.
Well, you and I say all the time that, when we go to a haunted location or a supposed haunted location to investigate, if you have a negative mindset to begin with, you're gonna attract negative energies. So the thoughts that run through your brain are actually creating energy. Everything that you do, everything that your body functions do on a natural way, breathing basically, that's energy. That's taking a form of energy, even if it's something that you don't have control over really. It's creating that energy. So the thought of negativity in your mind, in your brain, going into a location, we've always said this, and because we've experienced it, and we know a lot of people have experienced it, that will attract negative energy to you. We always say that you should try to walk into a location with a clear mind, clear mindset, basically, and free of drugs and alcohol and all that other stuff naturally, but try and keep a level head and think positively. And so, right there, basically, a lot of people have had experiences and have said that as well, not just us. And so, therefore, that negative energy that you're thinking of it's like a bullhorn to all the negativity that's out there. So there you have that energy, that quote-unquote type of energy that is attracting something. It's a beacon for something in the afterlife. And so I've sort of have taken that thought and, sort of expanded upon it a little bit and thought about, how is it that when we go to a location and we are in sort of our inner minds, even when we're on vacation in the Bahamas or Hawaii or Florida or wherever, and you're on that white sandy beach and relaxing on a chaise lounge with a Corona in your hand and, Ipanema music playing in the background, you are still leaving energy. There is energy that is being left behind. I'm sure that if you brought a recorder to that beach, you may find some spirits there. There's no confinement to the spirit world. They're not only obligated to abandoned places only. But it's just a thought to have and to think about as you go upon, your daily life, your everyday living and what you do, and that, if you do contain negativity, if you do have that, not only affects you, your body, your physical body, and we've known that for many, many years now, that, to think happy thoughts, you get healthier. To think negativity, it always brings you down and creates depression. And so the energy that you are creating yourself, let alone what your body functions are creating, that energy as well, I believe is affecting your surroundings. It's affecting, as someone is saying, Dream Master, it's talking about vibrations. It's that vibrations and that magnet that is surrounding you that I believe has a great effect on the afterlife and the paranormal. And I'm just interested in how that works, how that communication, or how those lines play with each other, and what that looks like, and how it extends that far, which is completely boggling my mind.
Well, okay. See, you're talking about this, and all I'm getting in my head is a vision. And let's talk about the energy. Okay, so when we're here, the energy that we have, the energy that we put forth, and the one place that I can really put forth as an example for me was Celestica, okay? A lot of people, when they go into this building, they feel the negative. They feel the darkness from the dark entity that is there. When I was there, I felt the love of the family. I was tuned in to the family and the mother and the children. That's what I was feeling. I wasn't feeling the negative. So whatever energy that they put forth, the love that was in that house is still there. Aside from, yes, there's a tragedy there. There was lives lost. It was horrible. And that is there. But the love is still there. The energy from the love, from the family, is still there. And that's what I was tuning into when I was there. So, yeah, I think what energy you put forth is going to still be there. Why is it that you have these residual hauntings? When we went to Post Town, when we played the music, okay, the maintenance guy, it wasn't a negative thing at all. But when we started playing the music, we got a reaction. That was probably, think about it. After a hard day, he went back to his little office, turned the radio on, put his feet up for a couple minutes. This was his happy spot, or this was his comfort spot. I believe that energy was still there. So, yeah, I'm seeing evidence that the energies that are being put forth do stay in a spot. Mindset has a lot to do with it. When we go in as investigators, I truly believe if you're going to find what you're looking for. If you're looking for the dark, if you're looking for the negative, you're going to find the negative. But if you are if you have an open mind, and if you have good intentions in your heart, I think you will connect with the good if whatever good is there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And you had touched on just something right now about music. And when Don was talking about his experience at Gettysburg, I kind of got blown away a little bit about a story about how when they were talking to the spirit box and asking the spirit about music and if they liked music, and they said yes, absolutely, and he played the music over and over again. It again solidified the idea that I have had and you have had for a long time now, that music seems to transcend. It's so cliche to say this. It's so, blah, 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 but music seems to transcend worlds. I'll dare to say that, because we have had many, many experiences where spirits are attracted to music. They seem to they're able to gravitate it more because I think it best describes their expression without possibly using a lot of energy. And just as you mentioned, Poatstown, where we played music, and the spirit of the janitor there who had died was attracted to it. We were just in upstate New York and had an experience with music where, constantly they were reacting to it only, or they were only reacting to us only when we played music. And that's happened in several other locations as well. And, we usually tend to play period music to the time of whatever traumatic experience, or whenever there was these spirits, whenever they did live or reside at the location wherever we were at, either it be in a home or in an insane asylum or in a penitentiary, wherever. The music that they're familiar with, they tend to gravitate to. And I think it's something that if you are a paranormal investigator out there, I think a lot of people should look into that more. And I know a lot of people who do play music and who utilize music when investigating, but I don't think it's done a lot. And you rarely ever see that done on a lot of the television reality shows that are out there, paranormal reality shows out there, that play music for the spirits, or try playing period music for the spirits out there to try and solicit communication. But it's very, and again, I think it goes along the same lines as creating that energy, because it's very emotional. Music has always been emotional to me, and I know to a lot of people. Face it. If you think back to the 70s or 80s, some of your favorite music that you may have liked during that period of time, doesn't that conjure up a memory for you, a good feeling possibly? Typically, usually it's a good feeling. You don't remember the bad ones when hearing music, or you quickly turn it off usually. But if there's a song that's playing on the radio that you haven't heard in such a long time, or maybe it was something, maybe it was your wedding song, or maybe it was something that you played in high school that was at a party that you had a really good time at, and it brings back that memory. Just think what that does to the spirit world, and how that in itself allows them to be able to communicate with you, because now they're feeling a little bit more at ease, instead of you just calling their name out or grilling them with questions. Music just seems to ease them into the situation, or ease them into actually communicating with you. And so again, here we go. Donna's talking about music and how that was able to transcend with him, and how he was blown away by it. And that was probably one of the pivotal moments with him and his belief in the paranormal. I just think that it's an amazing concept that, here are these little things that we're finding out as we go along in life in the paranormal world, and what things are kind of working. And I try and emphasize those points so that, other people out there that have the energy, more energy than I do, can do maybe better research or better investigation to that matter, and hopefully, come up with some sort of answer to this.
Well, when he was talking about that, all I could think about was Naples Hotel. I mean, to me, that's still one of the best experiences ever. We're playing this music, and we came in contact with a spirit that loved bluegrass music. That's when the REM pod was going off, and everything was just happening. It was like all of a sudden, once we started playing this music, it was just like this little mini explosion of activity, and that was amazing. But what was it? It was the connection between where they're at, wherever that is, and here, and the music was the conductor. It was that wire that connected us, and I think that's awesome. I mean, yeah, we've gotten some really, really good experiences with music. I mean, but what is music? Music is energy. It's the flow, it's the notes. Music has an energy all of its own. So when you combine that energy with your energy and their energy, it's like this big, beautiful ball of just, oh, it's just so cool.
I think someone in chat had mentioned earlier. Something about frequency. I saw that word pop up. It seems to be a frequency, them tapping into that type of frequency that relates to them and that they are comfortable with, and that they're able to attach to. I just find it fascinating that or you know what. Again, I don't like to say that I know it all or that is the answer to anything. It could just be coincidence. This is the skeptical side of me that I always have. It could be something that's coincidental, but, even with one skeptical eye that I have, I tend to find that music is something that is more so a conductor within the paranormal than not being a conductor within the paranormal. I'm not 100% sure on anything. That's why we are investigators, why we are researchers. We're not experts. And so therefore the education still continues and the knowledge is always still gained day after day. And so I just find it fascinating to, be able to have multiple experiences with something and be able to say that, there could be something to this factor that is stirring up energy or creating energy and allowing communication to come through. And it was interesting to hear that when Don was talking about his experiences. But I don't know, I'm curious for you guys if you've ever had an experience, with music even. And I've even had experiences while playing music. I'll tend to hear things, that are not about the music at all, but I usually tend to hear a lot of noises or hear things. Maybe it's a spirit that may have liked the music that I was playing at that moment, wherever I was, if I was in my home or some other place, not, investigating at all, not having that mindset at all, but things happening while the music was playing. It's interesting, and it just catches my eye, and it's something that I have delved into and I want to research a little bit more on. It's just an interesting topic.
It's just one other, I think it's another tool to use in finding that connection. It's funny because I'm watching you as you talk, and like you said, that's the skeptical side of you. And I just keep thinking, it's like, when these things happen, when we get the reactions, especially when we use the music, I can't help but get really, really happy. I mean, I know I should be skeptical, and I know I should be trying to figure it out, but it's like this big, giant surprise, and it just makes me happy that something's happening. It's like, it's a connection. Now, I don't know, I mean, the researcher side of me says, okay, you got to figure out exactly what's going on, what all conditions and everything. But the first thing that comes to mind is like, I just get so happy. It's a sense of joy. So I don't know, maybe that joy that what I'm feeling eggs them on and when they can feel it. I don't know. All I know is that how I feel when, especially, when we've used the music and we've gotten a reaction, it's like Christmas to me. It's like, this is happening. This is so cool. It is a connection. And I can't wait to use more music, see how it works. See how it what doors can it open? What is that the breakthrough? I know there's a million other things that can happen, but to me so far music has been the strongest one.
Well, we've talked tonight about energies and Gettysburg. What is it about Gettysburg that seems to be the creation of the mecca within the paranormal community, the paranormal world? It seems as though When you talk to any paranormal group or investigator, 9 times out of 10 they have investigated there. They've been to that location, and it just seems as though it's like it's a step that you have to complete before you're an actual paranormal investigator. You have to go to Gettysburg and investigate there, or else you're really not an investigator at all. What is it about Gettysburg that is such an attraction, that is such a destination for a lot of people within the paranormal community?
Okay, when I went there, it was 5 years ago. So this is at the very beginning. In fact, I was on my way back from Eastern State, which was where we met. It was the first time I'd ever investigated. I knew nothing about it. I had heard about Gettysburg, didn't really know, wasn't into, trust me, I wasn't into U.S. history. It had no connection. I just knew that it was a battlefield, and it was supposed to be haunted. I happened to look at the map, and I happened to see, oh, wait, on the way back, it's just like maybe a 15-minute, 20-minute drive. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I go there not knowing about anything about this place, and I had never felt anything like this. Never, ever. Now that I'm farther in and I've done more investigations and I've learned more, now I understand what I was feeling. But at that point, not knowing anything about, really about the location or where, this happened here or that, it was really just an overwhelming sense of something. The spirits are so strong and so heavy there, and there is such a feeling, like even the air is charged, and it's just something that you have to step on this land to feel it. It's such a concentration of energies. It's such a concentration of feelings, of emotions that range anywhere from joy all the way to extreme sadness. I knew nothing. I have no connection to the Civil War at all that I know of. What happened to me, I got to, saw all the little monuments. I got to the Irish monument. Had to stop, got out of the car, walked up to the monument, and was just overcome with such sorrow to the point where I could not stop crying. I was bawling my eyes out. It was amazing. I can still feel it. That really intrigued me. Why did this affect me so much? Why did this particular monument, where I have no Irish connection that I know of, why did this happen? Like everywhere in this area, you can feel it. But this one particular monument affected me so strongly, and that just created this, I want to go back. I want to see what happens again. And then again, like all of the other spots where they, like Devil's Den and Little Round Top and all of these that people talk about that they have experiences. And then even some of the visual evidence that I've seen. It is freaking amazing. When you look at some of these things, there just seems to be so much in this one area. And again, the Native American side of me, believes that the ground remembers everything. This is a spot. This is a place, a piece of land that truly does remember everything that transpired on here. And it's still, how do I put this? It's like it's still oozing. It's still churning. It's still there. Whatever atrocities that we did to each other, as human beings, they're still being felt. They're still there. I believe that these poor souls never got they didn't leave the way they should. They didn't have a peaceful transition. And I think because of that, they're still there. And whether they're still fighting the battle or whether they're still trying to find where they need to go, or maybe they still need to take care of their family, the loved ones that they left. There is so much happening there. So I think that's what the draw is. For me, it was like, I don't know why I took the turn. I don't know why. I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go there. Never planned on it. Never in a million years thought, I had no idea. But something caused me to turn and to go and to get there. And once I get there, I did have an experience. So there is a pull there. I believe it. And I believe different people have different pulls. There's different reasons why we go there. I think every investigator goes there because they are aware of the activity that's there. You've got people that are going there because of the activity. And that's kind of like in the back of my mind why I wanted to go there, because I had heard so much. I kind of knew it was haunted and heard things, and it was almost like a part of me wanted to say, okay, let me see. I want to see. Well, I didn't visually see anything, but I did experience it. So I did get an answer to my question. I think that is the same for a lot of other people. I think they want to go, they want to experience, and then again you have people like Don that I believe have a connection and are being pulled there because of, maybe family connection or maybe a past life. Who knows? He might have been there because he's had this interest all the way from being a child. I believe there's different reasons why people are drawn to Gettysburg, but I do know that the land itself, there's a whole lot there. There's an awful lot there.
See, it's kind of weird for me because I know you have continually talked about Gettysburg to me and have always said that, we have to go there, let's book it this time, and, we never do, it never happens. I don't know if it's subconsciously that, I'm sort of putting it aside. I'm not willingly doing that, but I don't have that feeling or that attraction that I must go to Gettysburg, You know me, and I've said this many, many times on the show, that I'm a history buff. I have always loved history. Social studies in school was my thing. I loved it. I just loved learning about history. And what fascinated me about history was learning about what people did before I was alive. That concept fascinated me. What was going on before I was even a thought, before I was anything. What was going on in this world, on the land that I'm walking on right now? What was going on? And then that was the attraction for me for history and learning about it in school and out of school as well. And so, within history, obviously, there's many wars that you've learned and been taught about. And I've been fascinated with them all: Revolutionary, Civil, War of 1812. Everything up to World War I and II, and Korean, Vietnam, everything. I've always been fascinated by it, but I've never had that attraction to go to Gettysburg, and it's really odd for me because typically whenever I hear about an infamous haunted location, or where I've heard there's many, many people who have had, extraordinary experiences at a particular location, and I have heard that about Gettysburg, there's no pull for me. For example, and I've said this to you, Lucy, many, many times, and you agree with me about this, that there is something about Ohio that I don't know what it is. And Don is from Ohio. He lives in Ohio. There is something about Ohio that I'm not going to say vortex. I'm not going to say, an energy force field or a portal or whatever. But there is something about the state of Ohio that just emphasizes and amps up the spiritual realm to a degree that I can't even fathom. There are many different locations that are infamous, and many that are non-infamous in Ohio, where there is just extraordinary amounts of experiences and just incidents and things that have happened that are related to the afterlife and the spiritual realm. And I've even just contemplated even moving there because there's just a feel for it. And I've had a bad experience at a location in Ohio, but I've also had really good experiences as well. I don't know what that is, and I don't know why, but that's the attraction for me. And it's not just one particular location in Ohio. It's the entire area. It's the land that is there. And with all the locations that we've gone to, there's stories in the research that we've done. There are many infamous stories in history about the Native American pilgrimage, and that was the sort of bridge between the East and West, and even the South and North for that matter. But it was also, that was the highway, the major highway for the Underground Railroad. And so, just right there with those two stories in history, the amount of energy that you could imagine being implanted and printed on land there is just extraordinary. It's just huge. And so, with that, you've then created the bed, the foundation for the living that have lived there after that fact, and have had traumatic experience and have died and gone into the afterlife and returned back to the land, to the living. It just seems to be all over the place. But I take that feeling of an attraction to a certain area, and I'm applying it to what my feelings are for Gettysburg, and it doesn't even compare. It doesn't, which is weird. And I want to go to Gettysburg. But I don't know. It's kind of weird for me. Maybe if I do go there, maybe the spirits are telling me I'm not ready for it, or that it's not. Depending on what energy level is there, maybe I'm not able to handle whatever it is that's there. I don't know. It's just weird. It's a weird thing, and I think about it all the time. Like, why the hell haven't I gone to Gettysburg yet? I'm stupid. It's idiotic, and I live close by. It's not even, it's not a huge, trek or road trip to me. It's kind of weird. So, I don't know. I've thought about it after a while, and I keep thinking about it. In between the times when you ask me to go, I'm like, why the hell aren't we going? It's weird.
You know what? I can't answer that, and I don't know what that is, but we'll get there when the time is right. Obviously, the time is not right for you there. And you're right about Ohio. Every place that we've gone in Ohio has produced some really amazing experiences, but it's not just the locations. You are right. It is. I don't know how many times I've driven across Ohio, and it's just, it's a weird feeling. It is a definitely weird feeling. It's not a bad feeling, but there's a lot there. Okay.
No, and it's almost an instantaneous thing with me when I cross the border. Usually, it's from Pennsylvania into Ohio. When I'm driving, it's a weirdness, and I've noticed it the last few times that we've gone to Ohio, to whatever location we were going to. It's a weird calmness that comes over me. I don't know how really to explain that feeling, but I know I've felt that calmness before. It's, I don't know, it's a weird energy, and it just, I know something is trying to communicate with me with that state. I don't know what it is, but I'm trying to be more receptive to it, to try and figure out what it is. I find it weird. It's kind of, it's like I don't want to even bother with it because it's too weird.
I don't know. But Ohio is good. So, you know what? I'm thinking it's like, okay, we need to plan a trip to Ohio rather than Gettysburg. We'll get to Gettysburg whenever. But Ohio, I mean, the last time we went to Sedamsville, that was so different than other times. Just what you experienced at Prospect Place, that was intense. It was. These are experiences that are just so different, and so they're different than experiences that we have other places. The experiences that we have in Ohio are definitely different than other places that we've been. And I think about that sometimes, I think about, and usually it doesn't hit me until afterwards, farther on down the line, that I think about the intensity of the experiences, For me, I tend to have intense experiences, not every single time, but they have been more spread out for me. For you, it has been in Ohio.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, and I don't want to delve into it too much now because I don't have an answer. I'll just be going in circles basically about it. But I try and equate that type of feeling and that attraction, and and I always then go back and I say, well, why don't I have that towards Gettysburg? It's kind of weird, there are things that as soon as I hear of a place, like just recently. And I've known about this location for a long time, but Nick Ropp's new show, they went to the Hinsdale House in New York. I don't know if it was this last episode or if that was a repeat.
Last week, last week.
Was it last week? And so, once I watched that show, it conjured up all of the research that I had done on the house myself, personally. And I said, that's it. I got to tell Lucy that's where we got to go. If we can, get a date set, let's go to Hinsdale. So,
do you know where they went tonight?
No.
Remember how we tried so hard to get into the Kreischer Mansion in New York?
Oh, really? In Staten Island?
They went tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, the Kreischer Mansion. I mean, we were able to get in, but it was a lot of money. Do you remember?
It was a lot of money. Yes.
It was, I think, when we called them, I think it was a couple of years ago, it was like $3,000 for the night, which I'm not going to shell that out.
No.
No matter how good the place is, I'm not going to shell that out. But yeah, so when I had watched the episode, I was like, we got to go. We have to go. I have to check it out. Not just because Nick Roff was there. I guess it was sort of like an alarm clock. It reminded me, wait a minute, you didn't go to Hinsdale. You've been talking about it. You've been doing research about it. You've had it on your list. Why haven't you gone? And there you go, popped up, and there was Nick. And so, I feel that attraction. When I watch Gettysburg episodes, again, it's nothing against Gettysburg. I don't want people to think I'm, downplaying it or saying or poo-pooing it or whatever. It's just weird for me. I don't have that attraction. I'm going to force myself to go. I don't care. I'll force myself to go to Gettysburg.
No.
And
then you're going to be like, okay, nothing's happening.
No, I won't do that.
But you'll be thinking it.
No, I won't. No, I got to force myself to get in the car and go. I don't know. Maybe one day we will. Soon.
But no, I didn't think about it. But Hinsdale, yes, definitely. I mean, yeah. And the thing that I like about, well, I'm just going to, say it. The thing that I like about Nick's show is that it's minus all the big drama, so you actually see the location. You actually get a feel of the activity. And that's what the pull is for me, because, yes, I watch these shows because I want to see the locations. I want to see, can we get there? Can we get in there? That's my my big pull about seeing these shows. And yeah, definitely, I'm in.
We'll talk to Nick and see if we can get him on the show again. Fairly soon now that there's the season finale, because their show airs on the same time that we do our show. And they do live tweets during their show. So they had said to you, Lucy, that they weren't able to come on because they do that. So maybe after their season finale, we'll be able to get them on and talk to them about it, because I'm actually fascinated with his show. I'm not trying to promote anything right now, but I actually may do a YouTube video on a review of his show, which you may want to watch. So check out our YouTube channel for maybe a video on that coming soon. It'll be interesting.
I've already reached out to them.
Yeah, I know you did. You told me about that, and they said yes, they would. We'd have to do a pre-record, which I hate to do pre-recorded shows because it doesn't include the audience, the listeners. So we'll try and get them live on a Friday night with us all. All right, so I just, again, want to say thank you to Don Allison for coming on our show. Great book, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, a journalist's journey into the paranormal. Highly recommend this book. If you go to Amazon.com, you can actually purchase it there. You can also go to ImetAGhost.com and check out the website there. I believe that's the publishing page. You can find out more about Don Allison and his other books as well. If you are a Civil War buff, he's done great books on the Civil War if you want to check that out as well. And one of his newest books, I believe, I'm sorry, I caught the middle of that last portion. Did he say he was actually going to write another paranormal book or something of that nature? He did?
Yes, he wants to write another paranormal book, but he's not exactly sure what direction he's going to go in. But he definitely has the urge to write another one. So I can't wait to read it.
Well, great. When we'd love to have him back on the show to talk about that. So thank you, Don, for coming on the show, and we hope you guys out there actually enjoyed listening to him, and hopefully you'll give him a shot and read his book.
So you ready to get on to some business?
Surely.
Okay, let's go to the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And, we've been uploading the shows to YouTube. Film ourselves when we're doing this so you get to see our faces and see how many cigarettes we smoke during the evening. So we've been getting a lot of comments and new listeners and new subscribers on YouTube. So our fan this week is from YouTube. It is Irish86, and they listened to us on YouTube, and they were kind enough after we did the scary facts, the second one I believe it was. He was kind enough to mention that I actually pronounced the name of the Voynich manuscript correctly. So I want to thank you, Irish, for noticing that I didn't screw something up for once. But they did have a wonderful comment about the show. And they said that it is no secret, however, how much I love Paranormal Review Radio. I've been a subscriber for quite a while now, and I always look forward to new episodes. So thank you for subscribing, and thank you for listening, Irish.
And I know the reason why you picked Irish to be fan of the week, because they pointed out how right you were and how wrong I was. And I admitted to them, I commented back and said, yes, I know she was right here, because I was calling it Voynich. I had heard Voynich before. And so there you go. Don't listen to everything that you hear all the time. But the actual pronunciation is Voynich manuscript. So, yes, thank you for pointing out my wrongdoing on that. I apologize. Don't forget, congratulations, Irish. Don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio fan of the week, just like us on Facebook or subscribe to us on YouTube.
Well, there will always be people who believe in the paranormal and those that feel there is a factual explanation. As we saw tonight, the paranormal has a way of letting you know that it's there and that it exists and that it's everywhere. We want to thank Don Allison for sharing his story with us tonight. It was great to share his experience. So, let's talk about next week. It is time once again for Anthony and I to conjure up a spirit for communication. But this isn't your everyday, ordinary spirit. The spirit that we will try and communicate with has given Hollywood inspirations for such movies as Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I am talking about the infamous serial killer, Ed Gein. Will we get inside the insidious mind of one of the most notorious, gruesome killers? Find out next week as we attempt to communicate. Thank you to our PRR family. You choose to spend time with us every single week, and we do treasure every single one of you. Thank you, Anthony, for being the best co-host in the world, even when you're not feeling good. So, until next week, dear friends, keep your mind open and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.